My brother writes to me from maximum security prison that I destroyed the family for a promotion. He's right, and I don't regret it. While he serves 20 years for a £1.5 billion substance trafficking empire, I became senior investigator with the highest success rate in Britain. Want to know how a boring customs officer job turned into a family war that made international headlines? 2 years ago, this same family called me a failure. "Emma, you check trucks for pennies while Stephen builds a business empire," Mom used to say. They didn't know that one of those trucks contained 50 kilograms of illegal substances, and their golden boy was working for a Mexican cartel. While the family admired his success, I was building a case file on the biggest substance trafficking operation in British history. 15 tons of illegal substances, 34 shipments, 1.59 billion on the streets, all hidden in frozen chicken. You know what hurt most? I watched for 8 months as he bought my parents gifts with trafficking money. A 45-0 conservatory, an 18-pounds-0 cruise, a BMW for himself, while I counted pennies in my rented flat. Today I'll tell you how a boring customs officer turned a family dinner into an international operation, how I chose between blood ties and justice, and why I don't regret my choice for a single second. Before I tell you how this all started, please do me a small favor. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Smash the like button if this story grabs your attention. And let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? It's incredible to see viewers from all corners of the UK and beyond following these stories. Now, let's dive into how a boring customs officer brought down her own family. They never let me forget I was the boring one. Stephen was the entrepreneur of flashy cars, expensive suits, always talking about his import business. When he bought his £400 house at 28, Dad called it proof of his vision. When I got my customs officer qualification, it was typical Emma settling for a government job. But I saw things they didn't. Stephen's sudden wealth coincided with no visible business premises. His office was a rented mailbox in Birmingham. His company existed only on paper. When I asked about his work at family dinners, he'd laugh it off with that condescending smile I'd grown to hate. "You wouldn't understand, Em. It's complicated international trade stuff. Not everyone's cut out for real business." The family ate it up completely. Stephen, the successful businessman, Emma, the petty bureaucrat checking lorries at Dover. They never realized that my boring job gave me access to every shipping manifest, every customs declaration, every import record in the UK. I could trace any shipment from origin to destination, track patterns that would be invisible to normal people. When Stephen started his frozen chicken company in early 2022, I was immediately curious. He knew absolutely nothing about food imports, had zero experience with cold storage logistics, yet suddenly he was moving massive shipments from Holland to the UK. The paperwork was perfect, too perfect. That's when I started keeping my own records. Every delivery, every route, every tiny inconsistency. While the family celebrated Stephen's meteoric success, I was building a case file that would eventually bring down the UK's biggest drug ring. Christmas 2021 was when I first noticed something seriously off. Stephen arrived at Mum and Dad's house in a brand new Audi RS 6.80 pounds, worth of German engineering with all the extras. He'd been driving a 10-year-old Ford Focus with 150 miles just 6 months earlier. "Business is absolutely booming," he announced confidently, tossing the keys on the kitchen counter like it was nothing special. "Finally found my perfect niche in international trade. Took a while to get established, but now it's paying off big time." Dad practically glowed with pride, chest puffed out like he'd personally achieved something. "That's my boy right there. Always said you had a natural head for business, Stephen. Just needed to find the right opportunity." I was working mandatory overtime at Dover Customs, pulling in £31 a year after taxes and national insurance. Stephen was supposedly importing frozen foods and driving cars worth nearly 3 times my entire annual salary. The math didn't add up at all. "What exactly are you importing?" I asked during dinner, trying to keep my tone casual and supportive rather than suspicious. Stephen waved his hand dismissively, like the question was beneath him. "Poultry products mainly, high-quality Dutch suppliers, UK distribution networks. Very specialized market with excellent profit margins." "Which suppliers specifically?" "You wouldn't know them, Em. Small family operations in Rotterdam area. Been building relationships for months now. It's all about trust in this business." But I did know them. Or rather, I knew they didn't exist in any official capacity. I'd spent my Monday morning checking the Dutch export registry, cross-referencing Stephen's vague descriptions with actual registered poultry exporters. No small family operations in Rotterdam matched anything he was describing. The family wasn't interested in boring details anyway. They just saw the impressive results, expensive gifts appearing regularly, lavish dinners at restaurants they could never normally afford, Stephen picking up every single bill without even looking at the total. Mum got her dream kitchen renovation for 12,000. Dad got his fantasy workshop set up in the garage with professional tools worth £8,000. They were living off my brother's mysterious success while I was still counting pennies and shopping at discount supermarkets in Dover. Emma's doing well too in her own way, Mum said half-heartedly during dessert, like she was obligated to mention me. Got another small promotion at Customs recently. Very steady work. That's nice, Stephen said without looking up from his expensive phone. Government work is definitely steady, reliable. Not everyone's cut out for the private sector and real entrepreneurship. The dismissal stung because it was so casual and automatic. Like my entire career was just a participation trophy, while his was the real prize that mattered. Like I was playing in the minor leagues while he was competing professionally. But customs work had taught me to spot patterns that others missed. And Stephen's pattern was screaming red flags to anyone who knew what to look for carefully. Stephen's success became impossible to ignore over the following months. Designer watches started appearing on his wrist regularly: Rolex Submariner, Omega Planet Ocean, even a Patek Philippe that cost more than most people's cars. Luxury holidays became monthly events that he documented extensively on social media. Dubai in January, Marbella in March, the Maldives in May, Monaco in July. His Instagram feed looked like a billionaire's lifestyle blog. Look at what your brother's achieved, Dad would say proudly at every single family gathering. Built a genuine business empire from absolutely nothing. That's what real ambition and determination look like, Emma. Meanwhile, I was working 60-hour weeks at Dover Customs, earning £28,000 a year before overtime pay. When I mentioned that the constant overtime was seriously affecting my physical health and mental well-being, Stephen actually laughed out loud. Should have started your own business instead, Em. Government jobs are designed for people who can't handle the real world and genuine competition. The worst part was watching how they spent his money freely while treating my legitimate concerns as pure jealousy and bitterness. When I suggested that Stephen's business model seemed fundamentally unclear and potentially unsustainable, Mum immediately accused me of being bitter about his incredible success. When I asked why he needed such expensive high-tech security systems for supposedly importing frozen chicken, Dad said I was always looking for problems where none exist. But I was looking at hard data that told a very different story. Stephen's company, Nordic Fresh Foods, was importing exactly 50 tons of frozen chicken every single month without fail. The shipments came from the same Dutch logistics firm every time, always delivered to the same warehouse facility in Redditch. The customs declarations were absolutely identical in every detail too, identical to be natural. Real food importers always had significant variation in their operations. Different suppliers based on availability and pricing, seasonal changes in product types and quantities, occasional quality issues requiring shipment adjustments. Stephen's paperwork looked like someone had photocopied the exact same form 34 times and just changed the dates. Either he was the most impossibly consistent chicken importer in UK history, or something else entirely was hidden in those refrigerated trucks. The family saw an inspiring success story. I saw a suspicious pattern that made every single one of my customs officer instincts scream warnings. By summer 2022, Stephen had bought his parents a 45-0 conservatory addition to their house. Full glass panels, professional underfloor heating, automatic climate control, the absolute works. He paid entirely in cash without even blinking. It's honestly the least I can do, he said during the installation process. Family comes first, always. When you're doing well, you take care of the people who matter most. I was still living in a cramped, rented flat in Dover, carefully saving every possible penny for a deposit on a small house somewhere affordable. Stephen was renovating properties like he was playing Monopoly with unlimited money. But I was systematically looking at the operational data. Stephen's company, Nordic Fresh Foods, was importing exactly 50 tons of frozen chicken monthly without any variation. The shipments originated from the same Dutch logistics firm, followed identical routes, and were always delivered to the same warehouse facility in Redditch. The customs declarations were mechanically identical, absolutely too identical to represent legitimate business operations. Real food importers always showed significant operational variation, different suppliers based on market conditions, seasonal changes in available products, occasional quality issues requiring shipment modifications, varying quantities based on demand fluctuations. Stephen's documentation looked like automated computer generation rather than authentic business records. The family interpreted this as an inspiring entrepreneurial success story. I recognized a deeply suspicious pattern that triggered every customs officer instinct I'd developed over years of training. September 2022 brought Stephen's biggest financial display yet. He bought Mom and Dad a comprehensive 2-week Mediterranean cruise for their 30th wedding anniversary. First-class cabins, all excursions included, unlimited drinks package, the complete luxury experience. Total cost, $18,000 paid entirely up front. You honestly can't put a price on creating family memories, he said confidently, handing them the elaborate tickets over Sunday dinner. This is what success is really about, being able to give back to the people who supported you. Mom actually started crying from overwhelming emotion. Dad couldn't stop talking excitedly about the detailed itinerary and all the places they'd visit. And I sat there knowing that absolutely no legitimate chicken importer generates that kind of disposable income within just 18 months of starting operations. Must be incredibly nice to be so generous with family, I said carefully. Stephen looked directly at me with that increasingly familiar patronizing smile. You'll definitely understand someday when you're running your own business instead of just following other people's rules all the time. That night, I went home and started assembling a proper investigative file. If Stephen was operating illegally, I was going to prove it systematically. If he was completely clean, I'd owe him a sincere apology. But the numbers absolutely didn't lie, and Stephen's numbers weren't adding up to anything legitimate. Nordic Fresh Foods was officially registered at Companies House, with Stephen listed as sole director. Authorized capital, exactly 10. No registered office address beyond a P.O. box in Birmingham. No employees listed anywhere. No published financial accounts available for review. Yet this apparent shell company was supposedly generating enough consistent profit to fund a luxury lifestyle and family gifts totaling over £100, zero in just 1 year. I systematically started tracking every single shipment processed under Nordic Fresh Foods. Dover handled most major food imports from Holland, and I had complete access to the customs database through my position. What I discovered was deeply disturbing and highly suspicious. 34 identical shipments between March and September 2022. Each one precisely the same. 50 tons of frozen chicken, packed in exactly 318 pallets. Same Dutch logistics company. Same Redditch warehouse destination. Absolutely no variation in weight, packaging configuration, or routing procedures. Real food imports fluctuate constantly due to multiple factors. Seasonal availability changes, quality control issues, market demand variations, supplier relationship changes. Legitimate importers adapt their operations constantly. Stephen's shipments look like computer-generated data rather than authentic business records. Then I noticed the precise timing correlations. Stephen's business trips to Holland aligned perfectly with major shipment arrival schedules. He'd fly out on Monday morning, the shipment would arrive Wednesday afternoon, he'd return Thursday evening, every single time without exception. Most legitimate food importers stayed in the UK and managed their logistics remotely through established relationships. Stephen was personally overseeing every single delivery like they contained something far more valuable than frozen chicken products. I started unofficially flagging Stephen's shipments in March 2022. Nothing dramatic or obvious, just routine customs inspections that somehow kept getting assigned to other ports through administrative procedures. I wanted to observe the operation myself without creating suspicion. The Dutch drivers were completely legitimate, hired by a real logistics company called Van der Berg Transport. They had absolutely no idea what they were actually carrying beyond properly documented frozen poultry products. The paperwork was absolutely flawless, proper temperature maintenance logs, official health certificates, everything perfectly legal on the surface. But there were subtle tells that only an experienced customs officer would notice and recognize. The shipments never varied by even a single kilogram. Real food imports always fluctuate due to natural factors, seasonal availability changes, quality control issues, market demand variations. Stephen's loads were mechanically identical, exactly 50 tons, packed in precisely 318 pallets, always the same configuration and arrangement. Temperature maintenance logs showed perfect consistency too. Frozen chicken requires constant 18 degrees Celsius throughout the entire transport process. Stephen's logs showed exactly 18 degrees Celsius for every shipment, every single reading, never fluctuating by even half a degree in either direction. Real refrigerated transport always has minor variations due to door openings, external temperature changes, equipment cycling patterns. Stephen's logs looked professionally fabricated rather than authentic. The warehouse facility in Redditch was registered to a shell company called Midlands Cold Storage Limited. I traced the ownership through 3 separate layers of paperwork before hitting a complete dead end. The electricity usage was absolutely enormous, far more than you'd need for standard cold storage operations. And the waste disposal contracts were highly suspicious and unusual. They were paying £3.0 monthly for industrial waste removal services, but generating absolutely no organic waste documentation. Frozen chicken processing operations produce significant organic waste packaging materials, spoiled products, cleaning waste, processing byproducts. Midlands Cold Storage was paying substantial money for waste disposal, but generating no official waste manifests or documentation. While the family celebrated Stephen's latest business expansion, I was systematically building comprehensive surveillance requests, phone intercepts, financial monitoring systems, movement tracking protocols. My supervisors thought I was developing a major case against an international food fraud operation. They had absolutely no idea it was my own brother. The breakthrough finally came in August 2022. I obtained official authorization to place the warehouse under covert surveillance through proper legal channels. Getting that authorization required 3 weeks of paperwork, risk assessments, and justification reports. I had to present my case to a panel of senior officers, including Detective Chief Inspector Sarah Morrison, who scrutinized every detail of my investigation. "This could potentially be massive, Emma," Morrison said after reviewing my 47-page surveillance request. "Food fraud operations often hide much more serious criminal activities. Your documentation is exceptional. I'm approving full covert surveillance with audio and visual monitoring." The surveillance team installed micro cameras throughout the warehouse perimeter on a Tuesday night in August. Motion-activated, night vision capable, feeding live streams directly to our monitoring station in Birmingham. I volunteered for the overnight shifts, telling myself it was professional dedication. Really, I needed to see with my own eyes what my brother was actually doing. Day 1 showed normal warehouse activity. Trucks arriving, pallets being moved, workers in freezer suits handling chicken crates, nothing unusual. Day 2, the same routine. I started wondering if I was wrong about everything, if Stephen really was just importing chicken and I was destroying my family over paranoid suspicions. Then came day 3, Wednesday morning, 6:47 a.m. The Dutch truck arrived exactly on schedule. Same driver, same routine, same paperwork. But this time, I watched every single minute through the surveillance feed. The driver helped unload the pallets, signed the delivery documents, and left within 30 minutes. Standard procedure. But then Stephen arrived. I hadn't seen him on previous surveillance days. He usually stayed away from the warehouse, managing everything remotely. But there he was, walking into the facility like he owned it, carrying a leather briefcase and wearing expensive clothes completely inappropriate for a cold storage warehouse. What happened next changed everything. Stephen directed the warehouse workers to move specific pallets to a separate area, not all of them, just 12 pallets from the center of the shipment. They used forklifts to position these pallets around a stainless steel table that hadn't been there during previous shipments. Then Stephen opened his briefcase and pulled out surgical gloves, a precision knife, and what looked like vacuum sealing equipment. I watched my brother systematically open frozen chicken packages with surgical precision. The packaging looked completely normal from the outside, professional food-grade plastic, proper labeling, temperature seals intact. But Stephen knew exactly where to cut. Inside each chicken package, embedded within the frozen meat, were vacuum-sealed plastic bricks. White, approximately 1 kilogram each, wrapped in multiple layers of plastic to prevent contamination and detection. Stephen extracted these bricks with practiced efficiency, like he'd done this hundreds of times before. Class A substances. I was watching my brother extract industrial quantities of illegal narcotics from frozen chicken shipments. The workers helped him process 12 pallets systematically. Each pallet contained approximately 4 packages with hidden narcotic bricks. 48 kilograms of pure controlled substances extracted from one shipment. Street value, approximately 4.8 million pounds. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was watching Stephen coordinate the repackaging operation. He divided the controlled substances into smaller quantities using precision scales, vacuum sealed them into distribution packages, and organized them by destination. I could see labels: Manchester, 5 kilogram, Liverpool, 8 kilogram, Edinburgh, 6 kilogram. My brother wasn't just importing illegal substances. He was running a nationwide distribution network. The surveillance footage was devastating, but I needed to see more. Stephen's operation was clearly sophisticated, involving multiple people and locations. I watched him make phone calls using encrypted devices, coordinating with couriers who arrived throughout the day to collect packages. Each courier followed the same pattern: arrive in unmarked vans, enter through the rear entrance, collect specific packages, sign false delivery documents, and leave immediately. No conversation, no delays, pure efficiency. By evening, all 48 kilograms had been distributed to couriers heading to different cities across England and Scotland. Stephen locked the empty chicken packages in industrial waste containers, cleaned the processing area with bleach, and reset the warehouse to normal operations. The next morning, legitimate chicken shipments resumed as if nothing had happened. I sat in the monitoring station at 3 a.m., watching the footage replay on multiple screens. My golden boy brother, who bought our parents expensive gifts and drove luxury cars, was running the UK distribution hub for a massive cocaine smuggling operation. But the evidence raised even more questions. This operation was too sophisticated for Stephen to have developed alone. The hidden compartments in chicken packages required professional modification. The distribution network spanned multiple cities. The timing coordination with Dutch suppliers suggested international connections. Stephen was working with a major criminal organization, possibly a cartel. I spent the next week reviewing additional surveillance footage, documenting every detail of the operation. Stephen personally oversaw 3 more shipments, each following identical procedures. The scale was staggering: approximately 50 kilograms of cocaine per shipment, arriving every 10 days, generating millions in street value. Over 9 months, Stephen's network had moved over 15 tons of cocaine through frozen chicken shipments. The UK's biggest drug importation operation, hidden behind legitimate food import procedures. And I was the only person who knew the truth. But I couldn't simply arrest him immediately. We needed to identify and capture the entire network: the international suppliers, the local couriers, the street dealers, the money laundering operations. I had to watch my brother systematically flood the country with dangerous drugs, while my family continuously praised his impressive business acumen. The surveillance footage was absolutely devastating. Stephen personally coordinating with warehouse staff, directing the careful extraction of cocaine bricks from professionally hollowed-out chicken packaging. Each 50-ton shipment contained approximately 50 kilograms of pure cocaine, hidden in specially designed compartments within industrial freezer containers. The operation was incredibly sophisticated. The cocaine was vacuum-sealed in plastic packaging, then embedded within frozen chicken products that had been professionally repackaged. X-ray scans would show authentic chicken bones and meat density. Temperature checks would confirm proper frozen storage conditions. Only detailed physical examination of every single package would reveal the hidden drugs. Stephen had discovered the perfect smuggling method that could bypass standard customs procedures. By autumn 2022, I had systematically mapped Stephen's entire criminal network. It wasn't just him operating alone, it was a sophisticated distribution system spanning England and Scotland with multiple operational levels. The Redditch warehouse was just the extraction and processing point. From there, the cocaine moved to specialized processing hubs: a house in Beeston run by our cousin Sharon and her partner, a flat in Dewsbury used by trusted couriers, established connections reaching all the way to Glasgow distribution networks. Stephen coordinated everything from his Leeds base of operations. He never personally touched the drugs himself, too smart and cautious for that level of exposure. He used encrypted communication phones, trusted family members, and a comprehensive network of professional drivers who move product across the country through established routes. The family had absolutely no idea about the true nature of his operations. When Stephen bought Sharon a new Cara 25 pounds, zero Mini Cooper with all the optional extras, they celebrated his family generosity. When he paid for elaborate family holidays to Spain and Portugal, they praised his remarkable success. They never questioned why a supposedly legitimate frozen chicken importer had relatives suddenly flush with unexplained cash. But I was systematically documenting everything through official surveillance channels. Phone intercepts revealed Stephen's regular contact with someone called Fendi Intelligence Analysis, suggested this was a direct operational link to the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. My brother wasn't just a UK drug dealer, he was the trusted British operational arm of one of Mexico's most violent criminal organizations. The scale was absolutely staggering. Over 9 months, Stephen's network had successfully imported 15.9 tons of cocaine worth 1.59 billion pounds on the street. Enough dangerous drugs to supply entire cities for months, hidden in frozen chicken deliveries that customs officers barely bothered to inspect thoroughly. And through it all, the family kept telling me I was completely wasting my potential in a dead-end government job. October brought even more damning evidence. Stephen's encrypted phone communications, intercepted through completely legal surveillance warrants, revealed the massive scope of his criminal operation. He wasn't just receiving drugs, she was coordinating comprehensive nationwide distribution networks. Intercepted messages showed Stephen directing couriers to Edinburgh, Manchester, Liverpool, and London. Each courier transported 10-15 kilograms of cocaine, enough to supply street dealers for several weeks. The operation moved 2-3 million pounds worth of drugs monthly through established routes. Stephen's personal cut was absolutely substantial. Bank records showed regular deposits of £100 50, 200, 0 monthly into various accounts under his direct control. He was earning more in a single month than I made in 7 years of customs work. But the most damning evidence was his direct communication with Fendi. The messages were coded but completely clear to anyone familiar with drug trafficking terminology. Stephen was requesting larger shipments, discussing complex payment methods, and coordinating security measures for high-value operations. My brother had become the UK operational contact for a Mexican cartel responsible for thousands of deaths across Central America. He was profiting from human misery on an absolutely industrial scale. The warning signs were absolutely everywhere, but the family consistently refused to see them or ask difficult questions. Stephen's lifestyle was completely impossible to maintain on legitimate chicken import profits. His business trips to Holland coincided exactly with major shipment arrival schedules. He paid for everything in cash and owned no legitimate business assets that could be verified. When I tried raising legitimate concerns, they immediately turned on me with hostility. "You're just completely jealous," Mum said after Stephen bought her a 15-pound zero kitchen renovation with professional appliances. "Your brother's worked incredibly hard for his success. You should be proud and supportive, not suspicious and bitter." Dad was significantly worse in his reactions. "Emma's always been negative about everything," he'd tell people at social gatherings. "Sees problems everywhere she looks. That's exactly why she's stuck in a dead-end government job, while Stephen's building a genuine empire." The final straw came at Stephen's elaborate birthday party in November 2022. He'd rented a private room at Manchester's most expensive restaurant, with champagne flowing freely throughout the evening. The family was there, plus his business associates, people I'd already identified through surveillance as money launderers and drug couriers. "A toast to Stephen," Dad announced proudly, raising his glass toward the ceiling. "The most successful man in our entire family. Shows exactly what you can achieve with genuine vision and determination." Everyone drank enthusiastically. Stephen grinned widely, basking in the complete adoration. I sat there knowing I had enough evidence to put him away for 20 years minimum. "What about you, Em?" Stephen asked, suddenly noticing my empty glass. "No toast for your incredibly successful big brother?" I looked directly at him, the golden boy who'd built his fortune on human misery and drug addiction. "I'm working on something very special for you," I said quietly. "A real surprise that you'll never forget." He laughed confidently. "Government work keeping you busy? Still checking lorries at Dover?" "Something like that," I replied calmly. 3 weeks later, I submitted my final comprehensive report to the National Crime Agency. The coordinated raid was scheduled for Christmas Day. I wanted Stephen to remember the exact moment his empire collapsed forever. The 247-page report detailed every single aspect of Stephen's criminal operation. Financial records showing completely unexplained wealth accumulation. Surveillance footage of systematic drug extraction procedures. Phone intercepts revealing direct cartel connections. Import records demonstrating impossible operational consistency. DCI Morrison was absolutely stunned by the scope. Emma, this is honestly the biggest cocaine importation case we've seen in the UK. Your brother's network moved over 1.5 billion pounds worth of drugs. This will definitely make international headlines. I know, I said. That's exactly why we need to hit them all simultaneously. If Stephen suspects anything at all, he'll warn the entire network and they'll disappear completely. The operation was officially codenamed Frozen Assets. 8 simultaneous raids across England and Scotland, coordinated with local police forces and the Serious Organized Crime Agency. Over 200 specially trained officers involved in the coordinated operation. Stephen's arrest was deliberately saved for Christmas Day. The symbolism wasn't accidental. I wanted the family to witness their golden boy's empire crumble during their most cherished family gathering. December 15th, 2022. The coordinated strikes began at dawn across multiple locations. Teams simultaneously hit the Redditch warehouse, the Beeston House, the Dewsbury Flat, and locations across England and Scotland. But Stephen's arrest was deliberately saved for Christmas Day, when the entire family would be gathered together. I volunteered for the arrest operation. My supervisors thought I was being exceptionally dedicated to the case. Really, I wanted to see Stephen's face when he realized his failure sister had orchestrated his complete downfall. The morning raids were absolutely spectacular in their results. The Redditch warehouse yielded 132 kilograms of cocaine and 35 kilograms of crystal meth, along with professional processing equipment and detailed distribution records. The Beeston House contained precision scales, packaging materials, and comprehensive dealer contact lists. But Stephen remained completely free, unaware that his criminal network was systematically collapsing around him. He arrived at Christmas dinner carrying expensive gifts: a £2 zero designer handbag for Mum, a 1/500 luxury watch for Dad, expensive designer clothes for everyone. Business has been absolutely incredible this year, he announced confidently. Best year yet, by far. The irony was absolutely perfect. Stephen was celebrating his criminal success while his empire burned around him. At exactly 2:47 p.m., the tactical team struck with professional precision. They'd been positioned around the house since noon, waiting for my predetermined signal. Stephen was carving the turkey when they burst through the door. Stephen Rayner, you're under arrest for conspiracy to import Class A drugs. The family's reaction was exactly what I expected. Complete shock, immediate denial, anger directed at the police rather than Stephen. Even with armed officers physically restraining him, they couldn't accept that their golden boy was a major drug trafficker. This is absolutely insane, Mum sobbed as they led Stephen away in handcuffs. He imports chicken. Tell them, Emma, you work in customs. This is all a terrible mistake. I stood up slowly, feeling every eye in the room focused on me. No mistake, Mum. Stephen's been importing cocaine hidden in frozen chicken crates. 15 tons over 9 months. I've been tracking every single shipment. The silence was absolutely complete. Dad's face went white. Mum's knees buckled. You? Stephen snarled, struggling against the handcuffs. You bloody grass. You've been spying on me. I've been doing my job, I said calmly. Protecting the UK from drug traffickers, even when they're family. As they dragged him out, Stephen was screaming threats and accusations. The family was in complete shock, unable to process that their Christmas dinner had become a crime scene. And I felt something I'd never experienced at a family gathering: complete satisfaction. The coordinated raids netted 8 arrests and over 25 million pounds in drugs and criminal assets. Stephen's empire crumbled in a single day. The Redditch warehouse yielded 132 kilos of cocaine and 35 kilos of crystal meth. The Beeston House contained processing equipment and comprehensive dealer lists. The Dewsbury Flat was a staging post for Scottish distribution networks. Within hours, the cartel connection made international headlines. UK's biggest drug ring smashed by Sisters investigation. The tabloids absolutely loved the family Anglia customs officer bringing down her own brother's billion-pound criminal operation. Stephen's assets were frozen immediately under legal procedures. The 400,000 house, the luxury cars, the business accounts, everything seized under the Proceeds of Crime Act. The conservatory he'd bought for Mom and Dad was repossessed, along with all the expensive gifts he'd given family members. The family's reaction was completely predictable. Denial, anger, then desperate attempts to distance themselves from Stephen's crimes. Suddenly, they'd always had concerns about his business operations. They'd never really understood how he made his money. But the damage was absolutely done. The family lost their conservatory, their cruise memories became permanently tainted, and their golden boy's largesse disappeared overnight. They had to sell their house to pay massive legal fees when Stephen's defense team tried to claim the family had been knowingly involved. Stephen's trial began in September 2023. The evidence was completely overwhelming. Phone intercepts, surveillance footage, comprehensive financial records. His defense tried claiming he'd been manipulated by others, that he was a small player in a larger international game. But I testified for 3 full days. I explained how I'd systematically tracked his shipments, built the comprehensive case, coordinated the raids. I described finding his communications with Mexican cartel contacts, his role as the UK's trusted distributor. The judge called it one of the most sophisticated drug operations ever prosecuted in the UK. Stephen received 20 years in maximum security prison. Sharon got 15 years for running the Beeston processing hub. The warehouse manager received 17 years. The couriers got between 16 years depending on their specific roles. The network Stephen had built received 117 years in total sentences. The family tried reconciliation attempts after the trial concluded. "You did the right thing," Mum said during one awkward visit to my flat. "We're proud of you for stopping him." But it was too late for reconciliation. They'd spent years systematically dismissing my career, my judgment, my worth. They'd chosen Stephen's lies over my truth until the handcuffs made denial impossible. I got promoted to senior customs investigator with a £15 zero salary increase. My success rate on drug interdiction cases became the highest in the UK. I work major international operations now, not routine truck inspections. The National Crime Agency offered me a position with their international trafficking unit. I accepted immediately. Sometimes people ask if I regret destroying my brother's life. The answer is simple. Stephen destroyed thousands of lives with his drugs. I just made sure he couldn't destroy any more. The family still tries to maintain contact. Birthday cards arrive occasionally. Christmas invitations that I politely decline. Awkward phone calls where they update me on Stephen's appeals and prison conditions. But I've learned that blood doesn't override betrayal. They taught me that family loyalty has limits, they just never expected me to enforce them. Stephen writes from Belmarsh, maximum security prison occasionally. Rambling letters about injustice, about family duty, about how I've ruined everything. He claims he was providing for the family, that I was jealous of his success, that I destroyed innocent people's lives. I don't reply to any of them. Last month, I received a letter that ended differently. Instead of accusations, Stephen wrote, "I hope you're proud of yourself. You got what you wanted. I'm in hell, the family's broken, and you're the hero. But remember, you'll always be the sister who destroyed her own blood for a promotion." I burned the letter without finishing it. He spent years calling me a failure while building his fortune on human misery. Now he's in a cell, and I'm stopping the next generation of drug traffickers. My work dismantling international trafficking networks has led to 23 major arrests and the seizure of over £300 million in drugs and assets. Seems like the boring government job worked out after all.